inside there.
I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is an open meeting of the Seward, Nebraska governing body. The city of Seward abides with the Nebraska Open Meetings Act in conducting business. A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is displayed on the north wall of this meeting room facility as required. Disclosure of meeting recording process is posted in the meeting room. A participant sign-in sheet is available for use by any citizen addressing the council. Presenters shall approach the podium, state their name and address for the clerk's record, and are asked to limit remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks should be directed to the mayor, who shall determine by whom any appropriate response shall be made. The city of Seward reserves the right to adjust the order of items on this agenda if necessary, and may elect to take action on any of the items listed. Please call the roll.
Coulterman.
Present.
Miller.
Here.
Singleton.
Here.
Streisand.
Here.
Morgan.
Here.
Wilken.
All right, first two items make up this evening's consent agenda.
Move to approve.
You have a motion and a second? All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
All right, first administrative item is consideration of a memorandum of understanding with the Seward Arts Council for Creative District designation. Greg, you want to start us off?
Yeah, the creative district designation was an item that was broached to the city by the Seward Arts Council, and I know we have Jeannie here, and so Jeannie, if you want to get up and just describe what the district is, the goals, and then the grant process that kind of precipitates this MOU.
Okay.
And identify yourself and address too.
I'm Jeannie Beamer, president of the Seward Arts Council, 1693, 224th. And so I'll talk a little bit about the creative districts. I pulled this right off the website. So the Nebraska Creative District Program utilizes the arts as an economic driver to support communities in Nebraska by telling their stories and elevating the value of the arts. So these are designated in certain areas, and we go through a process of Creative District Development Grant. So currently, SECDP and the Seward Arts Council are working on a 44-page booklet to start with a development grant, which will help enhance economic growth of the culture and arts in Seward. And I've been working towards this for 12 years, working with the Nebraska Arts Council, who this comes through. The first grant is worth $10,000, and then we can get as much as up to $250,000 or more in our city. So it's very valuable to Seward in this regard. So we already have, with Jonathan at the SECDP, our memorandum of understanding. They asked for another one with the city so that you could be the fiscal agent. So that is the main gist of why we're here to have three, the Seward Arts Council, SECDP, and the city in on this first step of our grant after we have to put this in with that booklet, so that they know that we're all in the same understanding of where we're gonna go with this, and you, the city, would be the fiscal agent for this. Do you have any questions, or?
Any questions or comments from the council? Greg, did you have anything?
Just, this one was broached to me, and they came and we visited on this, and we met with, I believe, representatives from Ashland.
Yes, Caleb
and-
was here, he's an economic development director from there, and also the districts that are already in position are Ashland, Beatrice, Benson, Brownville, Cozad, Norfolk, North Platte, Red Cloud, and Sydney. And so they've already been certified as a district, and once we would get that certification and this first booklet done, then we can start applying for these grants at different levels.
So in our discussion and meeting with them, the discussion we had back and forth is obviously, I think it's one of our things to promote arts and culture.
Yes.
But again, with the amount of stuff that we're doing, they said that they would take it on themselves, and what they really needed from the city was someone to serve as that fiscal agent when the grants come through, or the pass-through, as you see in the memorandum of understanding. We just ensure if there's any issue with the grant, that we'll be able to claw back the funds from the Art Council to try and fulfill that grant. Likely that's not gonna happen,
Right.
but that was really our only concern. Other than that, we felt confident that, we can handle the fiscal agent elements and be that pass-through essentially.
Right. And arts and culture is one of our pillars at the SECDP and the community of Seward. And so this would be very beneficial to continuing to grow the arts and culture here. And your partnership in this with that memorandum of understanding would be very helpful for us to complete this package, and then we can very soon start that process, so. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any questions or comments from the council?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
All right, item number 2, consideration of Seward County E911 interlocal budget for fiscal year 23-24. Welcome.
Welcome, good evening, members. You guys should all have a copy of the budget that I am presenting to you guys for fiscal year 2023-2024 for the Seward County 911 Center. Anybody have any questions?
Spencer, can you introduce yourself, especially since we have new council members at the election?
Spencer Conrad, the communication director for the 911 Center here for Seward County.
I'll just comment that, myself and John Culver from the county, worked on the budget with Spencer, and then it was presented at the last E911 board meeting?
Correct, yep,
And there were no concerns brought forward at that time?
correct. It
What I
was approved
understood.
at the April E911 board meeting.
Any questions or comments from the council?
But also at that meeting,
Yeah.
because Spencer's done such a fantastic job, and we chose to give a little more of an incentive, and that's why the budget has changed a little bit. We've had, what do you wanna say, we used to have a lot of open spots over there, and this is the first time that 911 Center has had a full staff since, I don't know how many years. I don't know, since 3 years.
I would say about 2019, 2020, yeah.
So, we just wanna compliment Spencer for doing a great job.
Yeah, he's been doing that. Awesome. He has a good team.
You'll see on this increase, it's about an overall increase of about 5% from the budget for this next fiscal year. And the current fiscal year, I'm on pace to come anywhere under budget, probably anywhere between 6 and 9%, as we're moving forward here for the last 2 months. So that money would then be able to stay in the fund and then carry over to the next year, to where it doesn't feel like you're putting as much of an increase into the next fiscal year budget, so.
We've also been able to start to figure out new ways to utilize some of the, what is it, the
The E911 wireless funds.
yes, thank you.
With the county going next gen 911 here towards the end of this year, end of the calendar year, it'll open up some funds that I have with wireless money, to be able to use for more things once we go live with that. And the go live dates are tentative with that right now, between September and December right now. Because the whole southeast region goes live at the same time, and they do one PSAP at a time. And there's 16 PSAPs in our region, so we're calendared in there, at some time in that 3-month period to go live with that. The onboarding for that has already started, and it's about a 6 to 8 month process.
I'll only add from a high level, I think goals of the council and the city were increased wages, competitive wages, full staffing. I think we've implemented that over the last few years to make ourselves competitive. And I think the last goal is to eliminate the number of E911 meetings that I show up at. And so Spencer hasn't had to deal with me.
I haven't had to see you.
Yeah, and so right there, you know that we're probably doing good and on good track, so. But I looked over this and I think I asked some questions or sent stuff on to Jessica and John and got all my answers, so I'm good as well from a budgetary standpoint.
Was there any other questions or comments, or entertain a motion?
So moved. Second.
A motion to approve and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Strice, and Morgan, 6-0.
Thank you all. I hate to present and leave, but I'm on my way to Milford to do the same.
All right, good
Have a
luck.
good
Thank
night.
you, Spencer.
Drive safe, thank you.
Item 3, consideration to approve historic courthouse downtown signage. Jonathan Jenk, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Jonathan Jenk from the Seward County Chamber Development Partnership. We're back in front of you tonight to follow up on our conversation about historic downtown Seward district signage. Appreciate the positive feedback that we've had, and I just want to acknowledge the number of partners that we have as a part of this project. Bob and Tim from the city have really been great partners to help steward this along. And I do also want to acknowledge my teammate Joni Brechka and really just her talent as a graphic designer to put these designs before you. So what we are looking for tonight is specific approval, and I did send out an email last week as well. And by the way, that email not just went to council members, to administration, but that actually went to, we have sort of listservs of over 150 downtown building and business owner contacts. We've really gotten overall positive feedback. There really hasn't been any major red flags that we've gotten as we sort of presented this to a larger group. We have a lot of support from our First Impressions working group. That's the group that was here present previously. And so really we're looking for final approval specifically for these signs. Again, this would replace downtown district, street signs, as well as the entrance signs, north, south, east, west. And I did have Tim and Bob that are gonna kind of fill in the gaps with this conversation as well. And I know Councilmember Miller had a couple of questions I want to make sure we hit on, but I thought I would just kind of start that open discussion and then also have Tim and Bob fill in some of those gaps as well.
One of the suggestions I would have is putting the sign roughly where you would put it on the courthouse square, for example, and then physically drive by or go far enough away, because I've been involved in a lot of sign designs, and it looks great on a computer screen, it looks great on your phone, you can read it very easily, but even from like this distance, I think the red Seward starts to get condensed, and I don't know if it's not quite as spaced out. Like I'm looking at our logo that we have even on this, it's easier to read the Seward on here than it is the Seward on there, so you may want to look at maybe spacing it out a little bit better, and I even would suggest maybe flipping the color so it's white with red outline, because it's just dark color on a dark color is just always hard to read, especially from a distance, and if you're at any speed. I'm as worried about the one you walk up to, because you're literally going to be 2 feet away from it if you're reading that particular one, but the ones that you expect people to drive by and be able to see at a glance without being distracting.
So just to confirm, Mayor, you're saying to actually flip the color palette here,
Yes.
that the Seward would actually be white and then red outline?
Yeah,
is
and
that right?
and maybe this is perception, but it looks like the letters are tighter than they are in our typical logo. Like it looks like the space between the letters should be a little bit so they don't they don't run together as much.
Okay.
And like for example, the Seward on the below the
Yep.
courthouse square. So the E, the bottom left corner of the E is touching the S. Right there, but to the left.
Yep.
That corner, but even on our logo, you have a little bit more space. I
Mhm.
realize there's a white outline on there that's not on here, but
Right.
it starts to get too condensed to where
Yep.
it's hard to distinguish the letters very well. And just so you know, on a side note, this is way deeper than you care, but typically, I know we always use capital letters for signs. Your brain typically doesn't read all caps naturally, so it does sometimes take a little bit more time to process when it's in all caps than it is like below when you read courthouse, because you just naturally have uppercase, lowercase. That's what you've been trained to read. So, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
He majored in font. I don't
Yeah,
know.
right.
So, but I would agree.
Okay, first of all, they're called typefaces.
Right, I know. So, I did too. So, I do agree that the white, or something, because from
Yeah.
here, it's not very pronounced.
Sure.
So, I would agree, it's the only thing I would maybe change or tweak.
Yep, so again, to affirm, we're looking for kind of the red and the white to be flipped on the Seward specifically, and to space it out just a little bit more, to be more
Clear.
Yeah, and similar to what the logo
And even
is.
the one up top, I mean, you might have more space and make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
Do
you're
it-
saying.
But I would
Yep.
do a sample and then literally go out and look on the street, and see if what you think. Like if you're 50 feet away to 100 feet away, and see if it makes sense. Because if it does, I mean, if you can see it fine, then it's fine. It's just, I've fallen on that trap too many times where it looks great on a computer screen, and then you spend the money and have them printed, and then it's like no one can read it.
Yep.
At least not when they're driving by.
Makes sense.
But otherwise, I think the general concept with the white on the blue, I think that pops really well. With the white outline, I think it'd be very noticeable. I think people are gonna know that this is something different. Like this is a special area that we're trying to promote. So no, I think the rest of that looks great.
I'll mention quickly, because I think Councilmember Miller's, one of the questions he had was around basically the order of the words here. This Courthouse Square Historic District is actually the exact language that's used in the National Register of Historic Places application. So we're just taking the words exactly how it is on that. So then if there is any question ever, why did you pick that? Because this is why we're recognized on a national basis, is because that's how we actually submitted the application back in the 80s.
And that's what will be printed on the historic marker if we get that as well.
Exactly, yep. I know Councilmember Miller had one other question, but Tim, Bob, do we have any other feedback?
The only thing that came up from a young lady in my office this morning, she noted the top sign, Seward Street, is all caps, to the mayor's point. The lower sign is lowercase for
Right.
the most part. Jonathan, I have a handout laying right there on the desk that shows what exists now on the corner of Sixth and Seward. Should be enough, you can pass them out if you can see
Yep.
them up closer. Which also shows how the signs are put together, one on top of the other, making a cross, basically. If you note, they're all lowercase, capital S with lowercase on the sign. So that would, to the mayor's point, probably easier to read in your mind when you see the Seward Street one.
That's probably what I would do too.
Well, that's one of those creative things where you could have it uniform like everything else, but we are trying to set it apart. So maybe
Correct.
it would make sense to have a different style. It doesn't matter.
Entirely up to you
Yeah.
guys, that's why we did these as full 8-inch tall signs,
Right.
which, there's a Workman Boulevard sign sitting down there, you can see, that's the standard 8-inch size, street sign. The length will vary depending on the terminology on the sign. Also, it was noted that the north and south on the Sixth Street, if you look on your picture, that is on the existing signs. The north and the south,
Yeah.
so. The Courthouse Square Historic District, that sign's pretty close to actual size of what would be going up on the signs. So if that Seward reads a little jumbled, then we may wanna look at that.
My preference would be the lower, where you use the lowercase, so it's consistent with everything else in town. No, like,
Where's the top sign?
So yeah, okay, so no all caps, unless we're kinda shooting to match the City of Seward's logo. For sure. Any other feedback on that? Thanks, Tim.
And I don't think it really matters as far as the lower sign, how big it is. Like there's no restrictions or standards per se, is there, for that size sign?
No, you want them to be uniform.
But we don't have another sign like that, right? The one that says Courthouse
Workman
Square.
Boulevard's the only bigger sign we have like that, besides a couple of them we put up on Fifth and Main.
But on the bottom
The
one.
bottom
Yeah,
one.
the bottom sign, no, there's no
Okay.
standard.
So that would be the one I would suggest, taking it to the corner where you might put it. Go walk across the street or drive by, I know it sounds silly, and just see how easy it is to read. Cause you may decide you need to maybe make the sign a little bit bigger or the letters a little bit bigger, just so it makes sense. Cause there's no reason to have a sign that people drive by and are like, what was that? And granted, depending on, you're not going terribly fast along there. It's not like you're going 75 along the interstate, but you still gonna wanna make sure that it makes sense when as you're trying to promote this area. But that's all. Yeah, Rich?
Is there a standard height for signs like this? A standard height off the ground, or so it's not blocking views of traffic on
Most of your caution signs and stuff are 7 foot.
7 foot? Okay, so there's a number in mind.
Anything up higher than that, usually like the courthouse square would be 11 feet, like that.
Okay, thank you.
From a just execution standpoint, of course, this will be dependent on contractors and ordering materials, but the goal is, if there is approval tonight from council, that we would actually try to install these before the 4th of July.
Awesome.
And so also just to confirm, we're looking for lowercase letters here. We'll work a little bit on the spacing, flip the colors, anything else on these particular signs that need editing.
And I would suggest too, when you get proof of those changes, maybe we send it to us, we can send it out to the council.
Sure.
Not that we're not expecting a vote or anything, but just so you can see it in case there's anything you strongly object to before.
From an
'Cause
aesthetic
we
standpoint.
still have time anyway, cause,
Yep.
otherwise I think, the design itself, I think it's gonna accomplish what you're hoping to accomplish. It's just more of a style, what
Yeah.
styling are you looking for, so.
Mhm.
Did we do our final double check with NDOT or the local?
Yeah.
Yes, as far as the courthouse square historic district, falls under our banner policy.
Okay.
So anything of that nature that we put up is okay by them in the highway right away. As far as the street signs, they're ours. Jerry said that they don't have nothing to do with any of that. That's on us.
Well, I've seen some communities, they have them like lit up, like, there's like Grand Island has some of their signs over the road that actually have light, like, it's like, it lights up at night, like
We
behind.
don't need it.
And so, yeah, I assume there couldn't be any standard, cause,
And those will be reflective.
Yeah.
They'll have the reflective, standard reflective stuff on them and everything else.
That might be too much change if we were gonna light them up.
no, yeah, slow down. Pump the brakes.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, quickly, Councilmember Miller was asking about the wayfinding sign. Again, we're not approving this tonight. We at least want to show you more of kind of like a life-size version of what this looks like, so you can get the look and feel. Ultimately, this would go to the commissioners for final approval. Of course, we want council feedback on this, but this would actually, we're proposing for it to be on the courthouse lawn, on the property, specifically on the northeast corner of that, of the courthouse, and then on the southeast corners where we're proposing to put that historic marker that would designate the courthouse square historic district and tell that story, like we have on the southwest corner of the 4th of July celebration story.
And on a side note, eventually we'll have a better understanding of where your offices may be located. That might be something you'd wanna add, just for people that are visiting, if whatever you wanna call, you wanna call it a welcome center or whatever you
Sure.
wanna describe it
That's
as,
a great point.
just so people can have a starting point if they're visiting town and they're not sure where to begin.
Yep.
And the only other thing I would say is once you decide, if you do get the historic marker,
Mm-hmm.
that'll take out a space for the craft show, so you should just let us know in advance so we don't sell it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good call.
It'd be an obstructed view, it's like Wrigley
Right.
Field, it's like buying tickets, because it's an obstructed view, it's right
Yeah.
behind the
A little cheaper,
historical sign.
cheaper spot.
Right. Thanks, Jonathan, appreciate your work
Yep.
on this,
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing the proofs. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Do you wanna take a formal vote
I
on
was gonna
this,
ask, do we have to vote on this?
Jonathan, or is everybody fine?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just be helpful, just for the formality of it, to say, hey, this is the way we're moving forward.
But maybe a motion in support of the general concept.
I will make a motion in support of
I will
moving
second.
forward with the
Alright.
concept.
Motion and a second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Coulterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Workman, 6-0.
That gives you the flexibility to tinker with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alright. Next we have item number 4, is items related to the construction of the South Water Tower. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, and good evening.
So what we are asking for tonight, we have approved, this city council has approved 2 meetings ago, the award of 2 contracts for the water tower, one for the actual construction of the tower, the second for demolition. We have sent the notice of award back to those contractors. They've given us completed agreements, a performance bond and a payment bond for each of those contracts. And so what we're asking for tonight is authorization for the mayor to countersign those contracts and start the process and issue a notice to proceed. So for the first contract, for the construction of the water tower to McGuire Iron, the amount of $3,087,600. And item 4B, for the demolition of the existing 200,000 gallon tank to Eisler Demolition in the amount of $149,300.
Any questions or comments from the council?
One motion, or do you have it?
We'll do one for each. We'll do 4A, the first one that you mentioned, we'll do first.
I move to approve.
Second.
You have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
Then for item 4B,
I'll move.
move for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilkin, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
All right, thank you. Item 5, update on the Park Avenue Storm Sewer Improvement Projects, and Bradford Street, 6th to 10th Street Storm Sewer Improvement Project. Mike, welcome back.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 requests here, 5A, the project on Park Avenue. This is a substantial project to rebuild the storm sewer from the waterway at 8th Street and Park Avenue all the way up to the punch basin at Cedar Street and Highway 15. And this is in advance of the state of Nebraska's reconstruction of Highway 15. The end point of this project will become the starting point of that project. And of course, they're going to be conveying quite a bit of material, quite a bit of storm sewer flow underneath Park Street and out, and should greatly improve. The second project being Bradford Avenue, same general purpose. Essentially, we're taking stormwater from Bradford and Roberts and Bradford, and we're conveying that down to 12th and Bradford, and we're increasing the pipe size so that we can, and deepening the pipe so we can adequately remove stormwater off the highway between Bradford and Roberts Street.
Mike,
Yes.
and it also takes water from Fifth Street, block east of the highway, right? To
The
the west?
5th Street, that project will then be a separate project, so after the construction of the highway project itself will have stubs on 6th Street to the east, and then we'll have to have a separate project in 2025, then to extend that to the intersection of 5th and Roberts and 5th and Bradford at that time. And then that will essentially complete the stormwater project through the center section of the city. That affects, the stormwater that heads east, from that area. So quite a substantial improvement once we get there, right, 2025. So we do have, these are unusual recommendations from the engineer on the project, Schemmer, not for the apparent low, but instead the second low. And there's basis for that. The apparent low, in general, did not have the experience, did not respond, and hasn't responded over a long period of time. So we're talking 4 weeks. And so we're at the point in time that unless we award this project to the second low, we'd have to take the option of rebidding the project. And we're certainly unsure that we would get the same bid activity at that time. So even though it's highly unusual, we certainly do recommend award, so for the Park Avenue Storm Sewer Project to General Excavating in the amount of $1,589,600.
$679, and for the Bradford Street project, also the general excavating for, in the amount of $944,553 in the United States.
Thanks, Mike.
The other item I would note in that recommendation is Mike, myself, Doug Hawley, and Alex from Shimmer met with Kelly and reviewed everything in relation to these bid documents, the bid information we received, the additional requests that Kelly asked us to make of the first contractor, and then we reported back throughout the last few weeks back to Kelly of what we received, which was essentially nothing. So we did follow up on this, because again, unusual. We just want to make sure we followed all our processes and that Kelly was comfortable with what we did in the recommendation by Shimmer.
Any questions or comments from the council? We will take these up individually, so we would start with 5A.
Move to approve.
Second.
The motion and second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wolken, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
In 5B,
Move to approve.
Second.
motion and second, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wolken, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
Alright, thanks, Mike. Item 6, consideration of issuance of requests for proposals for roof replacement of selected city properties due to June 14, 2022 storm event. Derek, you're up.
Yeah, so as you can tell, it's been quite a while since we had the storm event that rolled through, almost a year already, which is crazy to think about. And we had a lot of roof damage on city properties. So it took a while for the adjusters to go through and kind of see what we had and all that kind of stuff and see where our damages were. So we didn't get that back until late summer, early fall. I had something kind of drafted up for this RFP to try to get it going last fall. Then just kind of got cold on me and ran out of time. So with the weather getting warmer again, just decided to redig this back up. We already got paid out from the insurance companies for our properties that had roof damages. We went through, Greg and I did with the department heads to check on all the properties they included. Some properties like City Hall, you know, that's obviously a pretty big property, or the library or something like that. And then there's picnic shelter. So we went through and said, hey, do we really need to replace the roof on this picnic shelter? We feel okay with it. Obviously, like City Hall or the library, we want to make sure our roof works right and is in good shape. So that's why those properties are included, whereas, you know, some park properties are not. So going through the department heads, we determined which properties we'd like to move forward with, and presented to you tonight is what we hope to put out. I'm going to contact local companies. The big thing that we wanted to do with this is we didn't want to have contractors that are from different states coming in and low bidding and try to, you know, get the job, even though we don't know if they're going to do a good job or not. So we're putting a heavy emphasis on contractors that can display work in the city, you know, whether it's large scale projects, you know, pulling permits and stuff like that. So we're gonna make sure that we have that and review that carefully. So we will have this open until May 12th, and we will have a recommendation to award whoever we decide to go with through our process. I think that's about all. Anything to add, Greg?
Nope, that's it.
Any questions or comments from the council?
I have one.
Yes, Rich.
So Derek, are these going to be broken down into separate roofing projects? Or is it gonna be, yeah, so individual contractors, depending on their size and their scope, they can.
I think we had planned for them to itemize each building
Okay.
and then give us a grand total amount, and then we'd assess the total price for all the properties together. And I think it's our goal to go with one contractor. We don't wanna say, hey, you get this one, you get this one kind of thing. We wanna go with somebody that's gonna do them all. And hopefully this summer too, so we can be in good shape.
Thank you for that.
I move to approve.
Yes, we have a motion and a second for approval. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please register your votes. Please display the votes.
Voting in favor, Wilken, Colterman, Miller, Singleton, Streisand, Morgan, 6-0.
Alright, item number 7. This is, A is consideration of an ordinance to create a clubhouse short order cook position and amend the electric lineman, journeyman lineman pay steps related to apprentice completion. And then B is authorization to designate city clerk Bargman as additional signatory of city accounts. Greg?
Yeah, on the first item, let's start with the Clubhouse Short Order Cook. This was an item that was brought to us by Clubhouse General Manager Cody Harold, along with Adam Bodie, our Parks and Rec Assistant Director. One of the things that we talked about in the membership in the surveys that we got was trying to offer some food options, but above and beyond the standard fare of some nachos, hot dog roller, maybe some cold sub sandwiches and stuff in the cooler if they have them, and try to go a little bit of a step beyond. But sometimes, especially with the alcohol license being retained by us, to get that to work in a way that's cost efficient is very tough to do. And so they've been approached by a party that's willing to do it as a city seasonal employee, which we talked always said, if we can find the right person, but as you know, if you talk to anybody like Spare Time Cafe on the Square, finding somebody that's willing to do this and do it seasonally is rare. But we found somebody that's willing to do it, has a pedigree and a background, and works in the type of food that I think that you guys may be looking for. We'd ask them to create this, if this is the route we want to go, and then we'll continue to work with them on a menu. I'll be limited at first, try to cater to the golf leagues most likely first, and then expand that out as we go. And so that was the idea behind that. Derek and I did the research on the wages, and we feel they're very competitive. This person will be responsible for doing the actual cooking, all the ordering, all the food pickup, and cleanup and everything else in there. Obviously, we're going to try and find ways to limit. I mean, we just had the discussion today about instead of using plateware and stuff, we would utilize baskets, and you just throw it away, and throw the baskets in the wash for the night, and then clean them up in the morning. And so trying to find these different ways to utilize and keep the costs down, but get a fare and an offering, and then start building up to a point where we have a made-to-order menu. So most likely you're looking at burgers, chips, maybe fries, Phillies, chicken fingers, some of that fare, but made to order at the golf course, and then build from there. And then probably do more specialized stuff for league, where, as we did before, you get a menu the week before and say, this week we're doing chicken parm, next week we're doing steaks, this week we're doing burgers, and then you just say, yep, I'm signed up, I'll pay my $5 this week for my meal next week, or whatever it is. So that would be the plan going forward, but it works better from a cash flow standpoint because we hold the liquor license. That usually tends to be my biggest hang up and hiccup. So attempt to try this if we can put the plan together. No guarantee, but we just need to know where we could settle to get somebody in. If it's not the direction you want to go, let us know. But we think we have a good start on it. So that is that item. Any questions on that one?
So hours, what is the main focus, is the league night?
The main
hours?
focus will start at league, and then there'll probably be one or two other nights, because you can't do it with one person. You'll have to get serve staff and others to accommodate a lot more hours. We want to make sure that we're putting out a product that the membership likes. If they like it, others will come. Because one of the biggest things we got back in the survey was from the members that said, we would like to see this food option available, rather than us having to go order it, or Cody ordering it, coming in. And then build out from there and have a menu night, where you would come in on a Friday for lunch and dinner, and have a menu night that's available for the golf patrons, but also open to the public.
This is just gonna be an experiment,
Yep.
because we don't quite know what to expect. But, one option may be if this person wanted to make sandwiches ahead of time and wrap them up and put them in a cooler that, could sell when the person's not actually working, like for a lunch or whatever. We're just trying to offer a little bit more for especially the regulars and members than we currently can. So we're not making any promises, but without a pay line, we really can't even make an attempt at this. So that's why we need to have this included, if this is the direction you want us to go. If not, that's fine too, but this is the first step. Otherwise, there's no reason to move forward.
The other one is again, we have control. If we lease it out to an outside business, it gets into the thing where they dictate the menu, they do all these other things. They're not going to give that up and secede that over to the city. And if any of our previous ones have been an indication, some of the people that are interested right now are just not offering the food fare that we've seen requested, which is your standard kind of bar food. That's what people want to start off with. So we're trying to accommodate that, and so this is what was brought to us by Adam and Cody down there and Bob, and so they feel comfortable giving it a run, and we already have a vendor that can provide us the food sourcing and stuff because they're already delivering. And I instructed to him, I mean, the hardest part, other than if we can see some offset alcohol, increase in sales in alcohol, but we still wanna try and run this at, we're not here to like make a massive amount of money. We're trying to add an extra accoutrement to golf that makes the experience, enhance the experience.
I think my main concern with this would be, once we get to the point outside of leagues, where we already have kind of a, they're already, and not making this as a, we're now in the restaurant business, people are coming out to just eat out there.
I
Type of
don't
aspect.
think that's gonna happen much if they're not going there to golf.
Right, but that's where, outside of leagues, what is kind of the point of that though? I mean, you're out there for lunch, you're out there for dinner, at those time frames, to where it's not necessarily of you're going out to golf and then go grab something since you're already out there type of thing.
Well,
I just don't want it to be seen as, hey, when we now own the golf course,
Now
and we're
moving to
putting a
Nebraska,
restaurant out there
yeah.
to compete with bar food like Spare Time and those, cause that perceptive is gonna get real dicey real fast.
I agree with Carl. And I would think that, you know, I would ask Adam and Bob to revisit that with how many people are concerned with that with the survey, because I think a lot of golfers like to go to Squire Lords in Spare Time, or order a Pizza Inn, or support the existing local businesses. And so I just don't think that's that big an issue.
Well, I think they've been doing that since we haven't had food out there.
Right.
If you go back to when there was a restaurant out there, a lot of people did stay around. And when we didn't have alcohol out there, they absolutely did not stick around.
Well, and to your point, Mayor, there were people that would say, well, I don't like what's on the menu tonight, so I'm gonna drive down to Dorchester because that's fun, or go out to Shea Bubba or whatever at the time. So to me, there's always the back and forth of it of, you know, well, you look around the clubhouse, so I don't wanna sit with Carl, you know, he's in there and stuff. He beat me by 10 strokes, so I'm gonna go to.
That was also on the survey.
Yeah.
We did note that.
Yeah, you know what's hurt, so I have to seek food elsewhere. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of opinions over the years and stuff, and you just can't satisfy everybody.
And that's always been one of my concerns as well, is, you know, we don't wanna compete with existing businesses. You know, we kind of reluctantly took over the golf course to begin with, but it almost was out of a necessity, where if we didn't take over the golf course, I don't know that the golf course would have been able to have a golf course at that point. At that point, we inherited a restaurant that was already out there. And, you know, of course, leasing the space, we could argue we lease it to anybody who wants to lease the space if they want to put a restaurant in there. So maybe we're not directly competing, but we are indirectly allowing someone to be in there to compete. It's just, where do you want to draw the line? You know, is this too close to that direct competition? You know, again, I think the focus, or at least our hope, was to start with just league night, because we are specifically catering to the golfers who are there anyway. And I'll be honest with you, part of the reason for food is just from a safety standpoint, is that if you've been drinking all day or all night, you know, a lot of bar experts will tell you that, you know, it's important to have some food available just to kind of help with the not over consuming and being safer, you know, getting home and so on and so forth. So it all kind of ties in. And again, that's why I wanted to bring it to the council, because, you know, if you think it's a bad idea, we don't have to move forward with it. But I can tell you that that's really, since all the course improvements we've made since we've taken over the course, I think not having food is really the only outstanding issue that's been consistently brought to us. So we felt an obligation to explore that and offer to the council one possible solution. But again, it's up to you. But to your point, you know, we weren't looking to hire a full staff and be open 7 days or 6-7 days a week and to the general public. At this point, it was more to try to address the specific enhancement. And really, we've done, and I think the golf guys will tell you, I mean, we've seen a lot of greens fees coming in. So there's a lot of people golfing in Seward who aren't from the area necessarily, and they're not members. And so it's part of it just living up to that, what their expectations are. If you go to golf someplace, you expect there to be alcohol. You go golf someplace, you expect there to be some kind of food. And that's really what we're looking at. We're not looking at having steaks and lasagna and, you know, a full, you know, 5-course meal. It's just really, you know, they would expect her to be able to get a sandwich or a burger or something along those lines. So that's the thought process.
If you were to do this and made it specific only to league, I'm sorry, I'm not a golfer, so how much is that?
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
But I still don't think that it's a bad thing to have some kind of sandwiches or something there, you know, throughout the week as people are golfing on Saturdays and Sundays, either, you know, where they're consuming alcohol.
But we can order the question is, do you want someone there to make to order? If not, that's fine. We can order sub sandwiches that are pre-made and things like that and put them in the coolers and let them pull those things out. That's fine. It's this idea of, I wanna sit down, I wanna have kind of a hearty meal.
I think the question, so the survey, that wasn't in here specifically, did I miss it? Okay, so you did a survey.
We do a survey usually at the end of every season.
And you did hear a lot of that people were asking for feedback.
Plus, if you do short order, if you do subs and that, how much waste, you know, because there's an expiration date. If you do cook to order, you're not gonna have that waste.
Yeah.
So I would say no to the cold sandwiches, and the short order make more sense because you got more life expectancy with what's in the
Less
freezer.
waste, yeah.
So, and the sandwiches, like you're mentioning, the idea there would be is if the person's not there, it's a Saturday afternoon, you could have sandwiches pre-made in a cooler, like I want a ham and cheese sandwich, something quick to go. And we don't wanna overthink this, I think it's probably too late. But the point is, we just wanna be able to offer some kind of a food option beyond candy bars and mixed nuts.
Right, and I think that's kind of goes to my point, is where the main focus is gonna be around league nights, because it's the people that could be on the fence of, well, I could eat here, or do I go home and try to figure out what I've got to make? You know, I'm gonna make the choice of probably eat there. But as where people coming in from outside might have a different take of, I think that'd be a good opportunity where they come in and golf, and then they're like, oh, where can we go grab a meal somewhere else, rather than staying out there. That might be one of the cases. So I'm fine with more of the short order cook for the league nights and see how that goes, but I think that would be more than acceptable for me, because I don't like leftovers, so I might have somebody make me up something like that.
Well, and the other thing too is that, you know, there are quite a few people that golf during league, and yes, you know, a handful may go to one of the bars, a handful may go the other bars, but I think a lot of people just go home at this point, right? So I wouldn't assume that if we did this, that handful of people that may go to a local bar suddenly is now staying in that bar and necessarily loses business. I think there's a lot of people that would, you know, depending on what you want to do that night, may stick around, may still go to their usual places because now they've gotten accustomed to that, and they enjoy doing that with a smaller group because they know Carl's not going to be at that bar. So, wait, what?
Sorry, Carl.
He brought it up.
I know I did, I apologize.
It's in the survey.
I should've used John.
The other one from a fiscal standpoint is I think we've done a very good job over the years in trying to continue to not prop up the golf course on the backs of the taxpayer. And so revenue making streams within the golf course, even if we were able to make some revenue from this, either directly or peripherally, goes right back into the golf course to offset the taxpayer, to try and not have them, which again, no offense, but not a lot of the percentage of the city uses the golf course, just like the pool and everything else, so I do understand that. But we've really tried to do our due diligence to try and match those things out so that it's generating enough revenue, and Dan and Cody then are putting that money back into the course, whether it's through improvements in drainage, whether it's the cart paths. We've still had this discussion about some renovations to the clubhouse itself, because it is dated, it's not functional. and looking at some of those things. We have a parking lot that's always under, you know, a need for a little TLC. So there are things to be done, but we really like to, again, we're not taking this and just sticking it in people's pockets or, you know, propping up the rest of the tax base. We're facilitating golf with whatever we do generate.
And we've been very careful with the alcohol sales in the sense that, you know, we're not, you know, I don't want someone to feel that we're using their tax dollars to directly compete against them. You know, we've been very careful with that. You know, if you notice, we don't do promotions on alcohol like for what you call the general public. We don't have those type of sales where we're trying to draw people in. We're not open till 1 a.m. When the last golfer leaves, it shuts down pretty quick. It's, you know, so it's not like, you know, and that was something that was important to me because, you know, we're not competing with any other golf courses in town that would be privately owned, but there are bars, there are restaurants. So I've been trying to be very cognizant of that issue so people don't feel that that's what's happening. So, but you don't see, you know, maybe you wish there were drink specials, but you don't see those kinds of specials in hours that you would expect for a bar, a normal bar that would be open until 9, 10, 11, midnight, 1 in the morning, like you would maybe other places. So.
I'd move to approve shorter cook.
Second.
We're gonna do this as an ordinance,
Yeah.
so let's move on to
Slow
our
down.
other item. We
We
didn't wanna approve,
I'll introduce it then.
All right.
we didn't wanna do two. Let me also explain the other one real quick. So we only have one updated ordinance tonight. Pursuant to our discussions at the last meeting, we also made adjustments to, the electric journeyman lineman and the electric lineman positions. I think Derek included my adjustments on you see in the red line
Yeah.
there later in, page 106 of 117 of your packet. Essentially, this is a progression through pay steps. This matches what we've seen in other places like Norris, LES. They have kind of the standard merchants journeyman system for movement through the process. What this does is essentially creates 8 steps and different levels of that that we would work through. This is based on testing and then final testing or completion of books through that merchant's course or a comparable, correct, Derek? This would essentially allow over a 4-year period, just like you would see at those other named institutions, to move through the system. And then what would ultimately happen is after they reached that step 8, they've reached their hours of work, which it takes approximately 4 years to do so, that they would move up to a journeyman lineman as step 9. And that would match the progression that we see at the other facilities. And so this was under directive of the council to try and look at this and have a progression that moved more comparably to what we see in the market right now, what we're competing with. I will note, since that last meeting, we did have a resignation of a lineman. So they did leave and head off, I believe, to LES. So they will